Good meowing guys, gals, MBs, and YouTube catters. I'll kick this off by apologizing if I sound a lot more worse than my usual dog water voice. I've been fighting a sinus infection as well as a mild cold. It's also why I haven't posted a video in quite some time, but I wanted to take the time today to discuss the state and future of White Forest, as I believe after having a few weeks of being able to test this new format with the Burst Protocol, being able to play against a wide slew of decks, I believe that White Forest is relatively well positioned in this format, especially with the best decks in the format being decks like a branded Dragotail or Dragotail builds in general, where we already had a favorable matchup into it with White Forest, and with problematic hand traps hit like Droll and Lockbird. This has been a pretty decent format so far for White Forest, and it's a pretty decent format to pick up White Forest. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different builds with White Forest, as there's been a couple of different builds that have topped major tournaments recently with White Forest. And I will say this video is being recorded before we got the results of YCS Sydney. So while I do know that there were 2 White Forest lists in the top 32, we don't really know how those decks are built just yet. We might need a follow-up video in the future to check those lists out. But before we get into all of that, as always, if you found this video helpful, if you like this video, if you enjoyed this video, remember to like and subscribe and comment down below, all that good YouTube stuff. So let's jump into the first build of White Forest that I wanted to discuss today. So first and foremost, I wanted to obviously talk about White Forest as a Mina, or what we can really just call like the pure White Forest build at this point. As you can see, it's pretty standard at this point. I cut it down personally to an even 40, of course at the 2 wanted instead of the 3 wanted, but feel free to run 3 wanted if you wanted to, as well as I built this list in a relation to like a more wide open format, like if you were going to go to like a locals. But if you were to take this to a regionals or a YCS where you expect to see more branded Dragotail or like a lot more of higher level decks, then feel free to like take the Purlias and put the Purlias in the side, and you can put the thrusts in the main to search out your evenly matched for when you're going second. That all being said, pure White Forest or Asmina White Forest or whatever you want to call it, this is the pretty standard build we have going forward. The 3 Sylvie, the 1 Stellar, because we still have to play around Droll post side, 3 LZs and 1 Asmina LZ. These are all the names you need in a pure build, since you have starters like Witch of the White Forest wanted to get you into the rest of your names, and really any one name plus a spell and trap gets to fight through most hand traps that are being mainboarded right now to get into your full combo. I want to talk about this list in particular. The good thing about White Forest is this deck will always be relevant. The strength of this deck really is in how strong spells and traps are going to be in the format. So again, since the best deck in the format currently, or the most popular deck in the format currently, is branded Dragotail, we get to main board evenly matched. And even if these are dead cards going first, we do get to send them or even banish them out of our hand with a Diabellstar Vengeance, or send them with Diabellstar. The sideboard right now is currently for testing against a wide variety of decks. If you are running into a lot of different Lunalight decks, feel free to run Super Poly in the side. Notice that we are not running the Super Poly targets like your Garura and your Mud Dragon, unfortunately, because the extra deck space is very tight. We don't really have the room to play those targets, but we have the next best thing in Chorozo, where we can just go normal summon Sylvie. Now we have a spellcaster on the field and they have an extra deck monster, so now we can just super poly off their Lunalight Leo Dancer into a Chorozo, with Brandon being so relevant as well, ending a lot of their turns with the Ecclesia Synchro plus fusions like the Dragotail fusions on the board. You can just super poly off their Ecclesia or their Dragotail fusion like their Albion, the Sanctified Dragon, into your own Saint Asmina, and now they don't have access to their graveyard or targeting stuff on their field as well. You can then even go from that Saint Asmina, immediately tribute it off into your Towers Asmina. So Super Poly is a great tech card that you might want to consider running as a board breaker to follow up with your evenly matched in this format. As you can see though, there is one glaring missing thing in this deck, and that is the Dark Magician engine. The demod into Dragoon package with the Gaze of Timaeus. So a lot of people have asked me, a lot of people have commented on previous videos. I am not a believer in the DMod package for White Forest. It is a good package, don't get me wrong. The problem is with it in White Forest is if you were to play that package in White Forest, you would have to up your count of Diabell Star the Black Witch as your starter, which means we are breaking on White Forest names or White Forest starters with the build, as well as you are putting a soft garnet in your deck in Gaze of Timaeus that you want to search with the DMod to go into that Dragoon. And then the other reason is, does it really do anything against the glaring weakness of White Forest, which is Droll and Lockbird? You go special summon Diabell Star, set your deception, activate your deception, and then go into your DMod and search your Gaze of Timaeus. They droll you there, and now we don't get to play White Forest. Now we're just ending on a Dragoon, and a Dragoon in a format where everyone is maining Forbidden Droplet does not do anything. The other reason why is it also then takes up 2 extra deck spots that we don't have room for in a pure White Forest build, because you want to be running your Guardian Chimera for your Sinful Spoils. You want to be running your Azamina for Luna Lights. Snake Eyes Doom Dragon is probably the most flexible card out of here. We don't even have room for an SP Little Knight because of this, but the extra deck is pretty much set in stone for a pure White Forest Azamina build, and we don't really have room to make the DMod into the Dragoon. The last reason why I don't believe it is very good for this deck, and if you kept up with the OCG like I have, they pretty much came to the same conclusion, where after like 2 or 3 weeks of people trying out the Gaze of Timaeus package, they cut it all together. The last reason why is it uses your Diabell Star, the Black Witch, which significantly hampers our inboard. The only target that we have to be able to go into a DMod is the Diabell Star, the Black Witch in this deck, which if you're getting to Black Witch and it's not your starter, then you're already going full combo with White Forest, meaning you're already winning the game. It is almost impossible to break the full White Forest inboard. If you are using the Dragoon package, you have to banish the Diabell Star, of course, into the DMod and then make the DMod into a Dragoon. But that also makes our Sinful Spoils of Betrayal Silvera really bad, because then we would have to tribute the Diabell Star Vengeance to trigger the Silvera. And Silvera is our one out right now. Again, to every topping deck right now is currently maining 2 or 3 copies of Droplet, and setting Silvera and tributing that Diabell Star to bring back and then reset like your Deception, reset another Wanted for follow-up next turn is just so very strong. If you are playing the Dragoon and getting rid of the Diabell Star, the Black Witch, then now all of your interaction on your board is all monster effects. So now we are exceedingly weak to Forbidden Droplet or Book of Eclipse effects or Dark Ruler No More, and we don't have any follow-up after that or any interaction after we get like a Dark Ruler No More. The next version of the build of White Forest that has been seeing a lot of success that I wanted to talk about has probably been my favorite most recently of the White Forest builds is actually Elfnotes White Forest. The first glaring thing that you can see is there is no Azamina package anymore. Now, if you absolutely love the Azamina package and you want to run the Azamina package, you can. I don't think it's very optimal to do so if you are wanting to go to like a higher competitive setting. So the issue with running an Azamina package in Elfnotes White Forest is the fact that your Elfnotes Welcome Home, your Elfnotes Power Patron, and your Strelitzia all lock you into synchros for the turn. That also being paired with your Witch of the White Forest, which is probably one of your best starters in the deck, locks you out of darks for the turn. So while you could go through hoops and set up a Deception, set up a Debtors, make an Illa Sylvia during your opponent's turn as another form of interruption, the problem is that is then adding 3 to 6 bricks in your deck as well. Notice we don't have the Diabell Star, the Black Witch in here either, or Wanteds in here either. So being able to just cut 3 to 6 bricks in your deck. Also, the inboards that you are making with Elfnotes White Forest is not much different than an Azamina or pure White Forest variant as far as the types of interaction that we have. Elfnotes is a little bit more layered with negates like Rhapsodia of Madness being on a trap rather than a monster effect. Even without the Azamina package, we are just filling our board with a bunch of different interactions through monsters, whether it's ending on the Diabell plus a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon plus a Fabled Levy Lazabell. You can have your Sinful Spoils of the White Forest set to make Guardian Chimera during your opponent's turn. We also, as you can see, are running the Fallen and the Virtuous package, which is a very good set of cards that if your deck has the extra deck space to be running this package, you probably should be running this package. If you have not seen these cards, if you have not kept up with the current metagame right now, this is probably the best generic single target removal that they have ever printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! The reason why I like the Elfnote version of this deck a lot more is we get to play more White Forest names for a more pure synchro build. As you can see, since we're not running like a Diabell Star and the Sinful Spoils package, we can actually run the Rusia in the deck again. But the other bright side of this deck as well is this deck has a very good line into Droll and Lockbird, where we can make a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon. And if you haven't seen the line, I've covered it multiple times on this channel as well, so be sure to check out the other Elfnote White Forest videos. But you get to make a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon before you search a single card with just opening an Elfnote Tinea. And now we have a monster effect negate on exactly our 5th summon as well. So we are insulated against Nibiru, we're insulated against Droll and Lockbird. We do have some bridges from the Elfnote engine into the White Forest engine if we do break on the White Forest engine by going into a Hyper Librarian, into a Resilia to search out our White Forest name. But as you can see, we do get to play a lot of really good generic removal spells and traps with Fallen in the Virtuous and Forbidden Droplet as well. One last note about this build, because we have multiple monsters like Diabell's the White Witch, Diabell's Star Vengeance, Lucina, and Diabell, Queen of the White Forest, as well as Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, all of these cards we are ending on our inboard. We then get to play 3 copies of Dragon's Mind in our sideboard as an additional Solemn Judgment. If I had to pick a favorite deck, if I had to pick a favorite build for going into this format, I definitely am enjoying the Elfnote build a lot more. This build also only gets stronger when we get the next Elfnote name in the next Blazing Dominion set in a couple of months. So this is definitely a version of the deck to invest into. In the next video that I'm going to come up with, I'm going to show off this deck a little bit more in paper. I'm just waiting on the last cards to come in the mail. For this video, I just want to discuss these 2 versions of the deck. Now, I will say both of these versions are very viable. So if you like the Azamina version, if you want to play the Azamina version, you absolutely can play the Azamina version. The percentage points between these 2 decks is very nil. Both of the decks end on different forms of layered interaction. So it's really just what your personal preference is, what your personal play style is, which deck you would like to play. So I hope you enjoyed this brief little yap session or discussion about the state of White Forest currently right now. If you'd like to see me go over the topping lists for this current format, like on Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro Deck, and like the percentage points, and talk about the other different builds, or go more into this kind of theory crafting, I guess, for White Forest, then let me know down in the comments below. Like I said, the next video will most likely be a further discussion into Elfnote White Forest, because that's the version of the deck I've been enjoying the most in playtesting and taking 2 tournaments so far, as well as playing Dark Magician as a little bit of a break from White Forest. So if you'd like to see any of those decks, if you are absolutely in love with DMod and making Dragoon during your opponent's turn like I am, if you want to see those decks, let me know down in the comments as well. And while you're there, if you found this video helpful, if you enjoyed this video, let me know. Give this video a like, give me a subscribe, all that good YouTube stuff. And I hope you enjoyed the video. And as always, catters, good night.